Hey everyone, Pete Calandra here. Today's video is an excerpt from one of my college classes, and in this excerpt, we're spending quite a bit of time taking a fairly in-depth look at editing MIDI in Pro Tools. This is not an all-inclusive. There's still many more things that I could talk about and have talked about on various videos, but this was from a recent class, and I think it's a good resource for people that are just starting out in terms of sequencing and working with MIDI inside of Pro Tools. Anyway, if you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Leave any comments down below. Thanks for watching, and let's get right into it. We started talking about event operations last week and how to edit things using MIDI event operations. Now, the reason why this stuff is important is that, you know, unless you have super duper keyboard skills, you have to figure out ways to manipulate the data that you've entered in order to make it sound like music. And you're also going to be emulating what other instrumentalists do, right? So it's important to understand all these things as you're working. There are many ways in all the DAWs, but let's get right into this here. So, all right. So right here, I've got a really poorly played piano part, and we're going to fix it. So let me play you this. All right, it's really simple, very easy little piano bit, but it sounds bad. So we're going to open this up in the MIDI editor, and I'm going to resize this to my liking. And let's take a listen to it and look at it. Now, you see how the cursor has disappeared over to the left, and this is still here. Let me show you how to fix that. So over here, there's a circle with a triangle. You click on that, it says scrolling. And what I suggest everybody do is set it up so that Pro Tools scrolls like you're reading a book. It flips a page. And on the edit, arrange edit window, whatever you want to call this, if you go to options here, it says edit roll scrolling page. Once you set it up once, it should automatically do it. So for example, let me zoom in on this. Let me play this. See, it flips like it's flipping a page of a book. So I am personally very used to that, and I'm sure many of you are used to reading books, even in the digital world. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that this is green and this is blue. That gets changed over here. Just click, there's a little box here with colors on it, right? And if you set this up so that it says by track, you know, well, what that's for is if you're editing multiple MIDI tracks in this editor at the same time, it will sort it out by, it will just assign different colors to different tracks. And when you get really good at this, you can have 3 or 4 instruments open here and edit them all out at the same time, which is very helpful. But in general, none is a good option. Now, another thing to notice is that if you go to the setup page and preferences, we set this up so that the MIDI note color shows velocity. And this is very helpful. Because if you look at this, these are not all uniform green. Some of them are like this is very light green here. And then some of these are darker green here. This would help if I had this a different color. Because the bright colors are hard to see for MIDI. So you can see these are definitely lighter. What that means is that the velocity is lower. And if you can just look at this and know that this is a low velocity compared to these notes. And then to prove that, if I click on this, you'll see the velocity's there. And if I click on this, the velocity's higher. You could see by the stalks lighting up. So you could edit this whole thing, the velocity, right, without looking at the velocity down here. But what I want to first do is I want to first fix the timing, right? And we've gone over this before, but repetition, assertion through repetition. So I'm going to select this bit here. And I'm just going to click because there's another piano bit after this using the selector tool. And then Option and the letter 0, the number 0 brings up the quantized grid in the event operations window, right? And there is a key command to bring up the entire window, but you would need hold on. You would need an extended keyboard, right? Because the thing is command Option and 3. Right, and that brings up that whole window. But quantize is Option and 0. So the first thing you want to do is you want to see what is the smallest note value here. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and right. So anybody have a idea as to what that is? Is it quarter notes, 16th notes, 8th notes? Thank you, Scott. So we want to set our quantized grid to 8th notes because that's the lowest one here. And you can set it to all these different values, dotted notes, triplets, and then there are these grooves here, which we're going to go over. We could possibly go over that today. So we're going to set this to 8th note. And remember, you only need to know these top 3 for our class. Strength is the percentage closer to the grid it will bring the note. So if I do this 100% and I quantize everything here, every note is starts exactly on the grid, right? If I do 80%, the notes get each individual note gets 80% closer to the grid. But you can see as I zoom in here that some of the notes are not right on the grid, but they're closer, right? And so it's up to your individual sensibilities as to how accurately you want to quantize something. There are times certain kinds of music that you expect to hear perfect 100% quantization, but that's not how people play, right? So that's up for you to decide. Now, you could quantize everything, and that sounds better already. And there's nothing wrong with that. You could also use the grabber tool and then quantize different parts of this piece differently. So in other words, if I just wanted to select these low notes here that the left hand is playing, right? I could just lasso all of those. And when I get to a place where I need to get other notes, I stopped and then I'm holding the shift key down and then I can continue to lasso, right? So let's say I want to make these closer to the beat because maybe there's a bass player playing and you want to lock in with the bass player a little bit more and the bass player is good time. So maybe I'll make them 90% closer and apply that, right? And you can see the beginnings are closer, but they're not perfect, right? They're still, like this note here is still a little ahead of the beat. And then what you could do is you could select the rest of this I'm holding the shift key down, right? And then you could maybe make that 85% closer, right? So the rhythm is more accurately played, but it's not, it's not as mechanical as it could be. Okay, so now we need to voice this, right? So I'm going to listen to this. Okay, so first of all of these offbeat things, right? I'm going to make them a little softer. So I've lassoed them, and I can hold the command key down, right? And just hover over a note, and I can click and drag down. Let me zoom in on that. So I'm holding the command key down, and I can click and drag down. Whoops. Doing this zoom in and zoom out thing is really whack. Okay, so let me, right, okay, great. So I can zoom in, and you can watch these stalks here. I can click, and you see just the ones that are selected I can drag down. Let's take a listen to that. Okay, so this one should come up because there's a little melodic figure. Now, what if I want to hear just the top part here and how that's working, right? So what you can do is you can lasso these low notes again. Whoops. And then use the key command, Command and M like Mary, and then you'll see that these notes have become grayed out, that they're muted within the track. So now I can focus in on what the top part sounds like. Okay, so I want it to be right. I want that to be my melody. So I'm still going to bring this down a little bit more, these notes. And this one's a little soft, right? Okay, and then you hear how that got like unnaturally louder, right? This note here and this note here, they both need to be a little bit softer because they're the harmony note, they're not the melody note. And this note too, right? I'm just holding that command key down, hovering, and that could be a little softer. Now you see this here, too loud, right? So we can bring that down. And then these notes here, you could see the velocities are so loud. So we're going to just bring those down, and the top note as well. So let's take a listen to that. And that works really well. Now let's take a listen to how the bass notes fit in. So I'm going to lasso those bottom notes again, right? And then Command M will unmute them. Okay, so there's something wrong with these notes here. Can anybody venture a guess as to how, in your opinion, what would make them sound? What would make that sound better? I'll play it again. I'll play it again. So what is the function of those highlighted notes? Is it melody? Is it accompaniment? What is it? What is it? Support. Thank you, Ethan. That's exactly right. Listen again and tell me, is the volume of those notes getting in the way of the melody anywhere? Right? So, doesn't seem to be the case. What do you mean, Kimberly? Okay. Actually, from my perspective, if I played that and I heard myself playing like that for real, I'd be very upset because it's too loud. Right. Right. Exactly. So you guys are hearing over Zoom, which is degrading the sound a little bit, obviously, but you're hearing that some of the notes are too loud. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something else. Let me show you another little trick, right? So we've got, oops, if we click on this note, why is it not showing me the velocity? Wow, that is really weird. Pro Tools doing something weird. Okay, let's do this, right? So I'm going to call up the event operations window. Let's do that again. And I'm going to go to change velocity, right? So let me look at this note here. Oh. Okay, so like that's about 70. And then this one here is 74. And the melody, you could see the melody is below that, right? So you don't want the melody to be softer than the accompaniment. So you've got two things you can do here. So what I can do is I can lasso these inner voices like this, right? And just bring them down like that. All right, let's take a listen to that. So now some of the bass notes are too loud also. So I'm going to lasso all these. And then I'm going to go here. And then I'm going to limit them. So I could scale them down, and maybe my highest velocity on the bass notes should be about, if the melody was around 74, right? Maybe the accompaniment could be around 60. So I'm gonna scale it by 85%, right? And I'm gonna limit to between 1 and 60. And then I'm going to hit apply, but let me back out a little bit so you can see what happens to those stalks. Boom. See, they all go down. It's basically like adding an audio compressor. It's bringing them all down a certain amount, but it's putting a cap on what the highest velocity is. And our first note could be a little louder. So that's sounding better, all right? Now, there's two other things. we can do. The first is that there's a problem with the sustain pedal. The sustain pedal is overlapping, making some mud. I don't know if you can hear it over Zoom, but there's control for that. All right, so I'm going to go right here to this lane, and I'm going to go to the lane view selector, and I'm going to go down to controllers. And this is something to look at. Wherever you see how these are all white, right? Where you see an amber one, that means that there is data there that's that MIDI data. So if I go to controllers, you could see the sustain, which is the bottom one here, hard to see on your small screen, is amber. And if I click there, you could see that here's the sustain pedal. And you'll notice that the sustain pedal is either on this type of a setup. It's not like an acoustic piano where you can have the sustain pedal, like, you know, all these fine gradations of sustain pedal. Pro Tools can read that, and there are digital pianos that have, you know, like 127 different shades of sustain pedal. But this particular setup and what you guys mostly have, the sustain pedal is either on or it's off. When it's on, the notes are sustaining when you let go of the keys. So in other words, I push a sustain, I play a chord, I push the sustain pedal down, my hands are off the keyboard, the notes are sounding. I let go, they stop, right? So it's either on, it's off. It's not like a quarter pedal, eighth of a pedal, half pedal. That doesn't exist in the kinds of setups that you have and that I have here. My digital piano that's in the other room has multiple shades, right? But it has a special pedal setup that I had to buy for it in order to achieve that, right? Yeah. So, okay. So it's either on or it's off. And when it's up here, it's on. And when it's down here, it's off. And you could see that the chords are changing and the pedal is ringing out. So this is a good exercise with which to use our second edit mode that we're going to work with, which is slip, which enables you to get in between the grid, right? So there's a couple of ways that you can do this, right? Let me show you one. So I want to put a dot with the grabber tool right before the chord change, drag down, and then put a dot right after the chord change and drag up. And that's it. Clean. Now, you can go through the whole piece like that, not a problem. Do one here. And you can actually do this too. You can hit a dot and then hit another dot here and then just drag down like that, right? Make sure you get all the way to the bottom too. That works. Or what you can also do is, let me undo that. You can use the selector tool and you can just click and drag across like that, copy, which is Command C, and then paste that in here. Right? And then, yeah. And then see these here, the chord, I did it after the chord change. So it's a little sloppily played. So let me delete those. Right? And then I can just paste in. No, I want to go right here. Like that, right? And then right here. A little earlier. So you could see that you're pasting data down in this lane, but it's not affecting your notes, which is really cool. Okay, great. So let's do this. Much better, right? Okay. Now, if you're playing the piano, in the last measure of this little bit, listen to it and tell me what you think of the tempo. Should I do something with the tempo? What do you think? Well, you're in the right ballpark, Charlie. But rubato occurs like throughout the piece, here and there. At the end, we want a rallentando, right? We want it to slow down just a little bit at the end, so that it goes boo beep ba beep ba ba bum bum bum, right? That's what you would do, and you know, you don't want it to be boom beep doo beep da 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 da. You don't want it to be that. You want it to be subtle, right? So you can do that, right? And we went over that a little bit last week, and that's done up in this area here. And so you've got your tempo ruler. So we're going to click on this, and then you can resize this. And then over here, there's a scroller, right? And so this also you want to do in slip, and you want to use the pencil for this. And so you can just, let me listen to this. Da, 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 just on the last few notes. So zoom in, whoops, with letter T. And just somewhere over here. And just like a little subtle. That might be too much, but let's take a listen to that, right? That's too many salsa gigs. That's not bad, right? Let's make it. It could be a little bit more dramatic. So and maybe start a little earlier. So click, and we'll go down a little further. That's okay. I think I prefer the previous one. Just a little subtle, and then you would shut this afterwards. Make sure you shut that. And let's listen to our little piece. Right, it could be a little bit more dramatic, but this is a simple little piece. You don't want it to be so over the top. But okay, right? So that's a bunch of MIDI editing tools. Let me just show you something that I'm doing here to keep track of what it is I'm supposed to be doing on these, because I put this together last year, and I have another example that we're going to go over that I put together earlier today. Okay, so you'll notice that there is an additional lane here in our rulers, and I added that. That's called markers, right? And there's a lot of things that you can do with Pro Tools in terms of markers. They've added a lot over the last year or so. It's always been that there are markers on the ruler area, but now you can have markers on tracks, which is really interesting. And I don't really use that, but that's really helpful if you're doing the dialogue and sound effects for a 2-hour feature film, to have like a note right above your clip to tell you what it is that is at, like, an hour and 50 minutes into the timeline. So what I've done here is, for the first bit, quantize, fixed velocity, and sustain pedal. This one is quantize and change feel. So how you do that is, let me go to the end here. So let's say I'm right here on the timeline. In order to bring up, show how you made sustain or adjustment again. Yes, Marlo, I'll go over that one more time before we move on. Let me just finish the thing with the markers, all right? So I'm after the piece because I don't want to mess up my markers that I've got there. And all I have to do is hit Enter on my computer keyboard. And it's called memory location markers, and there's a lot of things that you can do with memory locations. You can you can set up, like, let's say you've got 400 tracks, right? And you're mixing a film, and there's like 40 tracks of dialogue, and there's 40 tracks of sound effects, and then there's 40 tracks of natural sound, and they're not all playing at the same time, but they have different treatments on all of them, so they're on different tracks. Well, you can set up a screen that has just your main character's 5 dialogue tracks, right? And then that's a memory location. And what you do is there is this is really advanced, so don't worry about this, but you can, memory locations right here, right? You can have it set up so that these numbers, you tap in these numbers and it changes to that screen. I might show that in a later class, but let's see where we're going. But what's really cool about these memory locations is that I always have this open on a second screen so that I can refer to it. So I'm at measure 75 right now, right? Let's say I want to get to note duration, quantize accents, which is number 3. What I do on my keyboard here is I do decimal point, 3, and decimal point, and then it will take me to that spot. So I'm going to do decimal point, 3, decimal point, and you see I'm back to measure 13, right? And it shows here. If I want to go to the quantize change field, decimal point, 2, decimal point, and if I want to get back to the quantize fixed velocity and sustain pedal, decimal point, 1, decimal point. Okay. So this is a little advanced. Don't worry about that. But I just wanted to show you memory mark locations, markers, whatever you want to call them. Each DAW is a little different. They're invaluable tools for keeping track of your piece, and we will go over them in a little more detail. So let me show you, Marlo, how to fix this again. So I'm gonna, just for right now, I'm gonna delete this. Okay. And this is basically what we had at the beginning. So we have sustain pedal should change there. So like if you were a real pianist, you would change every time there's a chord change, or I would change, actually, if I wanted to keep everything really clean, I'd use more legato technique with my hands and change the sustain pedal like even every beat or two. I mean, if you watch Keith Jarrett play, he's his right foot, well, when he was healthy, his right foot on the pedal board was unbelievable. Was incredible when he was playing ballads, right? Just up and down and all sorts of stuff. So, but for our purposes, basics, we're going to use the grabber tool. And I want to change at bar 1, beat 3, right? That's where we are. So I'm going to go right before, and I'm in slip mode. And also, I had you guys change the settings on your Mac so that the function keys work correctly. So the function key F2 gets you to the slip mode. So in other words, if I'm on grid right here and I want to get to slip mode, if I hit F2, boom, I'm there. F4, F1 is shuffle. We're going to go over shuffle. F3 is spot, F4, and then slip, F2. Now, you can also hold down the option key and do the same thing as well if you don't want to change. So F1, F2, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. So we're going to be in slip mode for this because we want to be able to get between the grid with our editing. So I'm going to use my grabber tool, and just before the grid of beat 3, I'm going to make a dot by clicking on that. And just after the beat, I'm going to click, right? And then I can just drag down in the middle of that all the way down to the bottom. Alternatively, you can put your first dot, click and drag down, and then you can fine tune. I'm holding the mouse down, and I can drag left and right, which is really cool. In other words, I'm doing this action here, and the right. I'm just keeping that click, and I can just fine tune where that's going to start, and then I can click and drag up. And then I can also click and highlight that, copy it, and then I can just, find the spot here and Command V, paste that in. One more. Okay, great. So let me just do this. Save as. Okay, great. So now we're going to move forward and we're going to use Quantize to change the feel. Okay, man, that blows. And so we don't really need to, well, let's go to our edit window and you could see that I'm all over the place, right? But what's really interesting is that you will typically be the same distance from the grid, right? So what you could do to make that feel better is you'll notice the first one is right on the grid because I was doing wait for note. If I do this, if I click on all the other notes, and I'm in slip mode so I can grab everything, and hold the shift key down and go all the way to the end, right? I could do a really quick fix that'll make it sound a lot better by using the grabber tool and sliding everything over. As long as I'm in slip mode, I don't have to have it perfect because I don't want it perfect. I just want it closer. So that's better than the other one. And then this note here, wait, where was that? One note in the left hand is too soft. Let's see if you guys can let me know. I know where it is. I can see the color, but let me know. So measure 7, B3, 8. See how that note right here is too soft? Just click and drag that up. I didn't even bring the velocity editor up. I can just eyeball it. Right, and let me show you how I eyeballed that. Okay, so you see how light green that is? I'm just going to click and drag that up so it's about the same color as that, and then I can fine tune it depending upon how it sounds. And that only works if you go to Setup, Preferences, and MIDI Note Color Shows Velocity. All right, so now we've got that feeling a certain way. Let's highlight everything here. And let's bring up our quantizing again. Now, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and so let's now we brought it a little closer. Let's make it a little smoother. So we're gonna do our first thing we'll do is our strength and make sure it's turned on by clicking on that check mark, apply, and now let's listen. Let's change the feel of that. At least 2, right? Good, Charlie. So let's take our swing, and we're going to bring our swing to about, let's say, 50%, right? And we're, again, at eighth notes, and let's apply that. Now let's listen to the feel. Right, so we've changed the feel of that completely. Let's undo that. Let's try eighth note tuplet, 3 in the time of 2. So some of those worked and some of those didn't work, right? Well, Jose, it's weird because it used to be that 50% swing was no swing, and then you'd go up to about 60 or 65. But I've noticed recently that it'll start to swing even at 20%, right? So you could see that the second eighth note got moved later even at 20%, you know? Right, so that's back perfect. So let's just highlight this right here. And even if I do 10%, you see how the second eighth note, this is the first eighth note on the beat. This one's on the beat. The one on the and, like in between the beat, gets moved. So it never used, that got changed. And so if I go to 65, let's say, and apply, now it gets really dramatic. So let's do that for the whole bit. Now, let's see if I want to, now that it's quantized like that, let's see about making it into triplets. See, so, right, so I quantized it to swing, and then I wanted it to be triplets. So once I quantized it to swing, it was easier for me to make it into more of a triplet feel. Let me undo that, and this is our swing feel, and let's undo the swing feel. Let's do like even more of a dramatic swing and go up to about 85%. Oh, hold on. Let me undo the top. Make sure you unchecked things. You know what I mean? All right. That's almost a triplet feel. So you can really change the feel of something. Now, what I want to do with this also is I'm going to select all of these notes, right? And then I want to make the top note really louder. So I'm going to go to select split notes, and I'm going to select the top one note, the bottom two notes of each chord. And I'm going to apply that, right? And then I'm going to just hover, command, and drag the velocity down on these a little bit. And now the top note will be right. The top note's a little bit voiced a little bit better. Now, let's talk about some of these groove. Let's get this unswinging. All right, so let's just get this back to straight eighth notes. Now, if we click on the quantized grid, right, and we go down here, there are these different kinds of grooves, right? And you can make your own groove templates, which we will definitely be going over in a few weeks. But let's say Logic style grooves, right? So it tries to emulate the feel from Logic swing eighth, right? And let's just try that. Doesn't really do much, right? Let's try swing 8F. Now this is really dramatic. And you can do, excuse me. Hold on one second. I need to cough. I was yakking on the phone at around 2:30 for 45 minutes. My throat is a little dry. Sorry. Okay, so if we have Logic, if we do eighth notes D, the D version. So you can play around with those groove templates, and then you could try MPC style grooves. And so these are all 16th note swings. So we wouldn't really be using those for this. Cubase, feel injectors. So let's try their eighth shuffle. All right, so you can see how you can completely change the feel of something, and you can do that. You can do this with audio as well, too, which is really wild. We'll get into that later in the semester. So this is, let's listen to this. Okay, so I mentioned this last week with drums, with short notes like this. Hold on a second. Excuse me. I can play this note, right? There's no violin notes down there, but I could hold that note down and it doesn't change the duration, right, for these short articulations. So for me, it's always better when it looks good, right? So we could do something like this. We could select all of this, which is Command A. And then we could, it's Option P for duration. And we went over this last time, so we could set all. So there's 16th notes in there, so that could be 240. And we can apply that. And then you see that all of those look the same, right? I personally like to see a little space between the notes, but this actually helps you if you're going to export this for notation. So, oops, that's not going to change the way that it sounds, because it doesn't really matter how long you hold these notes down, but it just... Okay, so now we're going to... That's way rhythmically horrible, so we're going to select all that, and then this is 16th notes. One, so we're going to go to our quantize, which is right up here, and then we're going to do 16th notes, right? And we'll do strength at 92%, and then boom. Okay. So this is unquantized. And so what it's doing is it decided that this right here should be on the second 16th note. So I'm going to manually move that back here, right? And then this should be on the downbeat. That's how bad I played it. So, okay, so if you start having that, right, what you can just do is you can grab the first measure, right, and quantize that. And then all of this here is too early. So I'm going to just quickly drag that a little bit here to help it, and then apply the quantizing. And now that should be better. Yeah, and then we'll do this measure here. We'll apply that. Nope. So these all have to be moved back a little bit. It just helps out the quantizing. It's not a magic bullet, you know what I mean? And again, all these are early, so I'm just going to click and drag them all closer. I'm not going to make them perfect, and then I can add my quantizing, and then the same here.
Professor?
Yes.
You're using the slip function right now, right?
Correct.
Okay,
thank you. Slip mode. I haven't changed from slip mode. And yes, ask questions, please, please, please ask questions. Okay, great. And then apply. All right, so we've got that. So we've got our fake Aaron Copland music, right? And I think it's a little slow, so I'm going to bring the tempo up. Why not? Let's go back here. And our tempo is 84. So I'm just going to add a new tempo. We've gone over that before, tempo change. And I'll make that 104. Okay. So, yes, budget Aaron Copeland. So, it needs something else.
Professor,
Yes.
can you just do the tempo change again? I just
Yes,
wanted
not
to.
a problem.
I've been
Not a
having
problem.
trouble getting mine.
Not a problem. Okay. So the tempo is up here on the ruler, right? So if you click on this, it opens it up. You don't do tempo changes like this. You use this thing here with the pencil, as I did on the first example, to do rallentandos and accelerando. So rallentando means that it gets a little gradually slower, and accelerando means it gets a little faster because we have non-music majors in this class. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to use my selector tool, and I'm going to click on measure 13, or I can just type in 13 here. And then I'm going to click on the plus right here, this plus, add tempo change. And then this comes up, and then 104, and then boom, you see it right there. Okay, so think about how that sounds, right? What can be done? Listen to it one more time and try to think about what could make that sound more authentic. It's still sounding mechanical, and it's going to sound mechanical no matter what we do. But there's something that players do here that this realization hasn't quite got yet. You could, it's possible, Marlo, you could change the timing, yeah. But if I was to play this, right? A little some dynamics. Yeah. So that's done with these kinds of notes with MIDI velocity, right? There are dynamics. We're going to go over automating MIDI volume. So let's get our velocity up, and we're still on sustain. So we have to go back over here and go to velocity. Okay. Right. So you see how this looks here? This one looks better. So we're going to just grab this one. And this is why manual edit, you had to learn how to do manual editing, right? Because this one you're going to need to do manually. This one's too soft, right? And I'm not going to bring all the notes, just those top two notes down. And then this one here, I want to do a bigger accent on. Right? And then another, make this be a little louder. Now, you could also do this with the pencil tool. That will change and make all the notes the same volume, and then we'll have then we'll have to go and fix that afterwards. So you can also click and drag like this. Right? And we'll listen to this. This one's too soft. Right? So, and you could go through the whole piece like that. Now, again, the thing is that the top note is the melody note, and you want that to stick out a little bit. So what you can do is just lasso all the way across, hold the shift key down, right? And then just, if you just drag this up here, you'll see that that brings up the top note is going to be louder now. And that sounds better to me, all right? And I'm going to tell you that Most of my film scores have had heavy orchestral elements in it. And, you know, the films I did were a lot of documentaries for ESPN, for CNN, for PBS. Not a lot of budget to hire live players, right? I mean, if I have a $10,000 budget to score a 60-minute film, that like is basically like enough for me to make a little bit of money at the end of the day for the amount of time I spend working on it. So doing all of this detailed work really brings out the music. You know, if you go look at a great work by Vincent van Gogh or Gauguin or Monet or any great painter, right? You get close to that, you can just check out the incredible detail, you know, that the brush technique that they've got. It just, if you look at Picasso's drawings, like the pencil drawing, the details, incredible. If you look at the, like, you know, Bartok or Schoenberg or any of, especially in the 20th century, the amount of carefully calculated detail on the scores gives the players the intent of the performer, right? Here, you've got it right here. You can do it yourself, and you should do it yourself. The more detail you add. Now, this is where doing this work can make you a better musician, because you are creating the performance. So you have to make critical decisions. And it's, you know, what is the way to make that sound best? Instead of just like, these are the notes, you know, so if I'm playing, give me one sec. You know, if I'm playing something like, right, the detail to the dynamics that I just did with that stupid little piece, you know, it helps. Like, in other words, if I play like this, you know, I sound like I'm in 10th grade or in 8th grade, 7th grade, maybe 3rd grade. But if I play, right, more expression, more emotion, and it adds up. It adds up. Okay. All right. So let's critique that. All right. I'll play it one more time and tell me, not like content wise, performance wise, what kinds of things could make this better. So top notes are too loud. Okay, that's possible. We'll check that out. But think about what the content of this piece is, and what the harmonies and the melodies are saying. My internet connection is unstable. Let me know if something starts happening. I just had something come up on Zoom. Okay. Just listen to the performance, listen to what kind of music it is, and what can be done to realize it better. It glitched for a second. All right. Thank you, Charlie. Okay. So that bit there. If you were going to hear that performed by an orchestra Would it be nah, nah, nah? Or would it be nah, nah? You know, like gradually bringing it in. I can't sing, but, you know, right? There's no dynamics. On this next bit here, all those separated notes, right? That kind of a thing. So let's do the work. You get your ideas onto the pottery wheel, then you use your hands to shape it into something beautiful, right? Same thing here. You get your ideas in, and then you don't just write, you know, phrasings and mezzo fortes and hairpins and all the staccato notes and accent notes. You actually do it, right? And we'll get into that shortly because I have videos for us to watch. Okay, so let's do this. Let me just see something. What are we? Well, let me see what we're using here. Okay, so these are right. This is another thing I wanted to talk about today, and this is a good place to interject. So this right here is a free sounds, and Native Instruments is a company that makes the biggest, the most popular host for sounds, Contact. You can go to their website, nativeinstruments.com. You have to create an account, and then you could search here for free products, right? No. Just how about free? Well, here it is, free. Great. Wow, they've got even more stuff since I've been here last. Complete Start. That's a great one to download if you have the room in your hard drive, right? So you get a bunch of stuff. You get factory selection, right? And that's what this is, from the factory selection. Now, what they do with this is there are two types of dynamics, right? Soft or bowing. There are two types of dynamics. Now, with sustained notes, right, the way they've got this set up, hold on, excuse me. See, I'm banging that, hitting it softly, same volume, right? So the velocity, which is the speed with which the note gets depressed, how fast you go from the top to the bottom of the key bed, that doesn't change. That doesn't matter with this type of a library, because it's not velocity sensitive. Creative use of yoga blocks to hold my overhead projector. Okay, so what they've done is they've like every one of these notes on this patch has multiple levels of dynamics. So they're like, there's probably, with this free patch, there's probably three. It's probably piano, mezzo forte, and forte. And what they do for these sustained notes is they give you a method, a technique where you can crossfade, right, between those different dynamics while you're holding on to one note. So you don't have to press the note down. That's different than going from soft to loud, because when you play an instrument soft, it's a different harmonic content. You're exciting the strings differently than when you're really digging in with the bow, right? You could play softly, and I could turn the faders up. And it could be very loud. That's a studio effect. But here we're talking about a real performance. So what they've done is they've mapped the dynamics to what's called the mod wheel, and the mod wheel. You guys, hold on. Let me get a prop. I don't have it on my keyboard here because it's a piano keyboard, but the mod wheel is typically the one that's closest to the keyboard over here, and this is a pitch bend wheel. There might be a flat area that you can slide up and down, but this is the mod wheel. And so if you move this up and down on your keyboard controller or slide your finger on the little ribbon that they have, you will change the mod value. What I've done is I have set this little controller unit here up. It's got some sliders on it, and it's got some rotary knobs, and it's got some buttons. Typically, I've got this set to mute my mic, but for some reason it's not working today. So I'm wondering if the mod wheel is going to work actually. Yes, it is working. Okay, so watch. If I'll play the note, and I'll use this little slider here. So it gets not only softer, but darker, and it gets louder and brighter. And then you could combine, I've got this set up for volume as well, so I could do the two of them together. Very soft. And then I play like that with one hand, and then my other hand manipulating these faders and everything. It's a lot of fun, and it can be really great, really expressive. Okay, great. So what we can do though is, if you don't have one of those things, you don't need it. I have the Nano Control Studio version of that. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know how that one works, Charlie. That one is. Are you using the Bluetooth? Yeah, the Korg, but I'm saying that one I think is the big one. It's got pads on it, direct. Do you have the Korg app? Yes, so Jose, yes, you can use a volume pedal, but you would have to program the volume pedal in your keyboard controller to send modulation to do this, because the dynamics is modulation. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, because it's pretty simple. All right, let's continue on with this. All right, so let's open this up, and if we go over here, right? So we'll scroll down to controllers, and we're going to go to mod wheel, and it's a line. So we're going to use our pencil tool, and we're going to use our line tool, because it's better to do it freehand, but using the line when you're just starting out learning how to draw these stuff in is helpful. So we're going to go like this and draw that up. And then we're going to leave it there. And now let's take a listen. Come on, man. That took 2 seconds, and it's like 5 times better, right? And I didn't even do the volume thing with it. I just did the mod wheel. It's so much better. I'm not even going to touch the volume because I like that. All right. Now, okay, so for me, this ends too abruptly. So I'm going to go back to my selector tool. I'm going to click and drag, and then use my trim tool to bring these out. I do want a little bit of space. I'm using slip mode now. And what I can do here is I can draw a little decrescendo too, so that it's going to go up All right, try again. Now, all of these notes should be connected, right? So we're going to select those notes, not the last one. We're going to leave that blank. And we're going to do Option P, as in Paul. And we are going to change the duration. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to legato overlap or gap, right? So we don't want any overlap. We just want it to end when the next note starts. So we're going to make that 0, right? And then when I apply this, all these notes are going to end when the next note starts. See that? Now, we can now go and draw in our dynamics here. Let's get our pencil tool. And then we'll fade out to nothing again. There's one other thing we have to do. So, Jose, velocity typically works like if you play a sustained note in Expand 2, the velocity is going to be hooked up to that because that's a very elementary program. But velocity is typically used on short notes, right? On long sustaining notes, for instruments like woodwinds, brass, strings, they crossfade because those notes can sustain. You hit the note once, there's one velocity for the entire duration of that note. Velocity is an event. Modulation and volume and expression are continuous controllers or control change. So that means over time, that note is being held longer and you're changing the dynamics over time, like a real player does. So let's take a listen from the new section here. Okay, that's better. Now let me just, MIDI tip, okay? This is for your own edification, and I don't know if anybody else does this, but I do this. When you're playing, and this doesn't work with live musicians, you don't need to worry about this, but with MIDI musicians, you do. See that this note here and this note here are the same pitch, right? As are these two notes. Anywhere else? It's best to make them one continuous note instead of two notes. It's much smoother. So the way I do that is I lasso both of those and I do Option, Shift, and the number 3, and it becomes one note. Option, Shift, and 3. And then this will sound smoother. See that, how those sounded really smooth. And then I'm going to adjust the end because I don't like it. It gets too soft. We'll just come down just a little bit. Okay. There's a lot of information, right? So I'll break this up into different chapters so you don't have to, if you're going to go look at the review video, instead of going through an hour and 20 minutes, there'll be like little 20-minute segments or something like that. And they'll be labeled. It'll be much easier for you to review the material if you guys do that. Okay. So we've played this in, right? And let's say we want to harmonize this, add a second note. There's multiple ways to do that, right? But let's try one way that's easy. So let's select all of these notes, and we're just going to do a simple, and I'm not going to quantize this. We've gone over quantizing. This has a human feel to it. Now, if I push the up arrow, every time I push the up arrow, the note's going to go chromatically up. Let me actually get the marimba here. every time if this is the note, I push it, it's going to go up to here. I push it again, it's going to go up to here. Every time I push it, it goes up chromatically up the scale. If I push the down, it goes down chromatically. If I push the, let me just see something. Hold on, give me a second here. So let's do this, right? And then if I push the up arrow, it goes up. So if I hold the shift key and do that, right, it jumps up an octave. So I'm going to hold the shift key and press, it goes up an octave. And I'll undo that with Command Z. Now, if I hold the Option key and the Shift key, the Option and Shift, and then do an upward arrow, you'll see that the bottom note stays and it adds an octave above. So that's Option and Shift. Right? Great. So I've got that. Now, this is highlighted. So if I hold Option Shift and the downward arrow, it'll keep the top note and it will go down chromatically a third note. Hold on. Let's just last at the top note. Hold on a second. I made a mistake. Damn. Right. Excuse me. Hold just the Option key down and go down chromatically. Whoops. And now I let go of the Option key. And so now I've got right. And now let's say I want to make that some of those into a suspended chord, like a D, A, and G. Right. So now I can, and then these can go up half step and we can have a nice little doodad. Let me quantize this because the rhythm's really bothering me. It's eighth notes, right? Okay.
Professor?
Yes.
Can you show how you got that original one octave higher set of notes again?
Yep. Okay. Everything's highlighted. Now look, if it's one pitch, you can also go to the keyboard, and that's D2. If I click here, they all become highlighted. Option Shift on the keyboard and the upward arrow. So let me fit everything in so you could see this all in real time. A little lower. Okay, that should do it. Option Shift and the upward arrow. Boom. Right? Okay.
And Professor,
yes.
It automatically goes up the octave when you do that option
if you have
shift?
the shift, if you have the shift key, the shift is the octave key.
Okay.
So in other words, if I hit shift and up, the whole thing jumps up an octave. When you add the option key, the note that's selected stays the same and it adds the second note. Right? Option and then, right? So if I just did option and the up arrow, it goes up half step. Right? If I do option shift, it goes up an octave. So it's the shift key and the upward arrow that transposes that note up an octave. Or the selected note up an octave. So let's go option shift up arrow. And then we're going to make sure that just these are selected. And then we'll do option and the downward arrow. And now I'm letting go of option because I want to just move the highlighted note. So I'm just hitting the downward arrow. So let me show you. So I'm holding the Option key down and the downward arrow, and that gives us this, right, where the third note is highlighted. And then now I'm just going to push the downward arrow, and then just the highlighted note moves down. Now, you could go even further than this. Let's say I wanted to, I showed you how to do some motion. So let's say I'm going to take these three notes and I want those to go down to a G, boom, boom, right? And then let's say I want to take these three notes and go up to a B flat, excuse me. Let me close this, get more realistic. There we go. Right, so let's say I want to do these three notes and make it a 4-note chord. Just hold the Option key and then let go of the Option key. Okay, great. Now, I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to select everything here, right? No, I'm going to select, let's say I select just this top note, right? Option and the letter T brings up the transpose list, right? So if I want that top note now, instead of being a D, if I want that to be an E, I could also go up 2 semitones. Just type, whoops, man, you got to be careful because just 2 semitones, hit the enter, right? And then hit apply. So you could do it there. And then if I wanted this to go down 2 octaves, I make sure that that's 0. I could type in -2 and enter, and then hit enter again. And then that got transposed down 2 octaves. So that's intro to transposing. And Shift, thank you, Jose. In Windows, it's Shift and arrows up or down. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that greatly.